Morning. Well, as I mentioned last week, we're going to bend the wood we cut. We're going to make a couple guitar sides here. I've got some pieces of maple soaking here. Cats have been busy spilling the water and drinking it out of my little trough here, so that's been very helpful. Back here I've got my fixture to heat up and bend the wood, and I'll show you how that's all put together here in a minute. Just a simple trough of aluminum foil. Flip them over every once in a while, make sure they get soaked good all the way around. You want to make sure you spill as much water as you can on the floor and on your work surface. Seems to be kind of the par for the course. This will be dealing with electricity. You want that water there for, maximum safety. So this is the base to the whole project. What it is, it's three 300-watt light bulbs. Generates a lot of heat. I have different forms that'll fit on top of it that you're going to see here in a minute. I do have a temp sensing unit. I say that in quotations. You'll see that in a minute. That in theory will keep it from bursting into flames. So, as I stated, here's my temp sending unit. You'll see how it'll plug into the form here. Plugs in somewhere around here. So it's going to detect your temperature inside your box. All it is the sending unit for, this is off of a Fry Daddy. I think that's off of a hot plate of some sort. You can get those at your secondhand stores or whatever. But inside here, this is a temperature, basically a thermostat is what it is. And I've gone in and jumpered the wire back out to run my lights. And if you don't know how to do that, then maybe you shouldn't be messing with it. But it seems to work pretty well. I can tell you that the guidelines for your thermostat don't seem to work. The two I've done, I've had to actually stick a thermometer in there and set it according to the thermometer rather than whatever this dial indicator says. Here's a little bit of a close-up of the heating unit. Porcelain bases so they don't melt or crack or break. The only real weakness I see in it is wiring down below. I keep an eye on that, make sure it doesn't get too hot and melt. I haven't seen any of that, evidence of that yet, and I used it for maybe half a dozen guitars at this point. Just kind of whacked it together. I don't spend a lot of time on the finish of my fixtures and tools unless I have to. I'd rather be building rather than making tools. And over here, we need to get you out of the water, buddy. Ugh. It's like having raccoons. Still soaking here. Okay, obviously this is our form. And I have different forms for different sizes of guitars. You can get really fancy with this stuff, you can get really simple. All this is plywood, and this is just some stuff I got from your local home improvement type of store. It's just flashing you use for your house. I think one of them I have steel on, but that's just because I had it. Seems to work fine. It's just aluminum. Not going to melt or anything. I do have bolts running all the way across here every so many inches. Try to give you a shot of that on the inside. Kind of see that for some support. You can see where they are on the outside here, some of the heads. And this will just fit the lights like so. We take our temp sensing unit and plug it in like that. Then when it reaches a certain temp, shuts the lights off and just cycles it that way and maintains the temp. Okay, so this is the piece that basically makes your shape, exerts the pressure on your wood to bend it. Just kind of fits on like so. You got some eye bolts here that you tighten down and slowly pull it into shape. You can kind of see how it just follows the contour there. It's going to be pretty self-explanatory once we get going. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to look pretty. While that's heating up, we're going to prep this piece, this one side piece, to get it ready to go on the bender. Going on a bender. Kind of a side note. I cut these to width before I bend them. You'll see a lot of guys who will just bend rectangular pieces and then they'll trim it up later on in the process when they're gluing the body together. I like to get it as close as possible, so that is to say it's got the taper cut into it, so where it's narrower up by the neck and the body flares out and gets a little wider. What are we doing back there, dude? All right. I like to cut that ahead of time. There's a lot of ways you can build a guitar, obviously, so that's just my preference. You know, I feel like I should throw a disclaimer in here of some sort. You know, we are messing with water, we've got electricity, we've got heat. Do your homework. This is more for entertainment purposes than a how-to guide. So, now that that's out of the way, we're going to wrap this up like a wet wood Christmas present. Right, buddy? You know, water's going to run on the floor here in a second. I'm sure. No matter how good a job you do, it's always going to leak. And there's always going to be a point where you flip it over to bend it and your water will run out. So just accept that, I guess. Thanks for the help. Yep, there's the water goes out the end. I'll get it as tidy as possible. So you want to keep track of which side is out. So I have a very specific side that I want to be outside. It's more figured. It's just a better side of the wood. Now that we've got that wrapped up, this is pretty much what it looks like. Now I will pre-bend, in this case 10.5 inches in from where I want the end of the piece of the wood to be, just to get that first contour. It's really hard to press that down because with it being flat, you don't get heat in there. You'll see as I do this. But that's just something you need to be aware of. You almost got to get that first bend into it, and then the rest of it will form pretty easy. Just going to give you a shot here of how the thermostat works. You can kind of see how the light's on in there. Basically turn it down a little bit here, and it'll turn itself off. On and off. So it actually works pretty slick. Just kind of a fail-safe kind of device. I don't know if it actually get hot enough to set your wood on fire, but you know, you don't want to take that chance. I think at one point I had it tuned in to maybe 300 degrees, something like that. Okay guys, we're going to bend our second piece here. I've got my mark at, in this case it's 10.5 inches. Going to get that started. You can just feel it slowly bend as it gets warmed up. I don't know if you guys can see that light blinking on and off. That's the thermostat working. Slowly bending. You don't want to rush this. You want to make sure your wood's good and wet. You want to make sure your fixture is up to temp. And then it'll go pretty quick. You don't save any time by rushing it. Okay, that's looking pretty decent. Let's put this on. Side. There we go. Put that in there. Go. Get our sides, that's hot. Get our sides centered. Put that in there. Make sure it's centered on your form. Make sure you burn yourself 2 or 3 times. Okay, now we can start putting some pressure on it here. I think the obvious message I'm trying to get across here is pretty much anybody can make one of these. Anybody can do this if you really want to. Typically when I do this, I put it on this rolling cart. Then I can get around to all sides. It's a little easier to work with, a little easier to manipulate with, but for purposes of what we're doing here, I thought maybe this would work a little better. I got the GoPro going from the back side, give you a little better shot of it. It keeps me from walking in front of the camera all the time. All right, we'll start to put a little pressure on the back here, start to get it to bend. Doesn't really take a lot. If you can see these brackets here I have, they're actually pretty light gauge steel. So gives you some indication that I'm not putting 200 pounds of pressure on this thing. I'm just, you know, if If I can't screw them down by hand, I should probably slow down, which is a tough thing to remember. I don't know if you can hear that. You can hear the water boiling, and you can feel it. As it starts to boil, the wood will soften, and then it'll move just slightly on you. And then it'll stop boiling, and then suddenly it'll stop to move at about the same time. So, pretty good indication if you're moving at the right pace. I don't know if you guys can see, I've got a couple bungees on the back side, just giving it slow and steady pressure. This is slowly getting there. Okay, I've let the side actually cool on the form. We're going to pull it off, see how it works. All right, kind of see it's already springing back a little bit, so we got to work quick. There we go. Looks pretty good. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I think next week we're going to work on the electric build that I kind of have going in the background. We'll probably route some body. It's going to be a semi-hollow body style guitar. I'm going to let these sides sit for at least a week, make sure they're really dry and shaped up. We'll ultimately get back to them. Put any comments or questions down below. Don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button. Leonard says bye. See you next week.